How's it going, Changemaker friends, fam, community? This is Luis Perales, CEO of Changemaker High School, coming at you with another Changemaker Chat. On this edition of Changemaker Chat, we're going to be looking at the importance of schools being best for the world rather than just being best in the world. So, let's get after it. When we talk about being a school that's best for the world rather than just being a best school in the world, we really look at what schools should be focused on. Forever, we've talked about schools as a place where young people are gaining knowledge. The question now is, what are young people to do with that knowledge? In many instances, the acquisition of knowledge is just for knowledge's sake. In this era of high-stakes tests, for example, young people are learning to be able to take a test. But we think that we should be changing that equation. We should be looking at things a little bit different. So what does it mean to be the best school in the world? Well, best schools in the world are striving for something very specific. They're looking at specific metrics, looking at student attainment. They're looking at educational outcomes, and of course, college matriculation rates. All well and good. We shouldn't stop our young people from learning and from achieving and progressing into post-secondary. But we shouldn't sacrifice what's really important when we're looking at those outcomes. Now, when we start talking about being the best school for the world, the equation shifts and we start thinking about what's really important. Of course, our young people are paramount and most important, but also is the well-being of our educators, the well-being of families, the well-being of communities, and well-being of society as a whole. On our last Changemaker Chat, we talked about how quality of life is important. Well, when we're looking at being the best school for the world, we're looking at not just quality of life, but quality of everything. And we're lucky that we're living in a time where we're interconnected, where we can reach out and find out more and more about what people are doing around the world. One of the amazing things that's happening around the world is that people are jumping on to focus in on sustainable development goals. These sustainable development goals, 17 to be exact, are something that is a guide that can help schools so that they can be the best for the world. That means that their outcomes actually help to push things forward in our very precious world. So, what does that look like? Well, number one, we're looking at eradicating poverty. So, schools should really be teaching about what's the connection between education and economic mobility. And what does it look like when we take on a challenge of eradicating poverty? Once upon a time, there was a war on poverty. What happened to that? Are we still at war with poverty? What are we trying to do to improve the conditions for those who are less fortunate? Number two, we have to go after the issue of hunger. There's too many young people, too many individuals in general who are suffering from hunger in our society and across the world. Schools should be focusing on these topics. What can we do? How can we help? And how can we just go beyond charity and really get to the root of the issue? Number three, we should be looking at good health and well-being. Again, that's heart, body, mind, spirit, community, everything in between. Why? Because healthy young people means a healthy future. And healthy families means prosperity for everyone. Number four is quality education. We've seen that around the country, a lot of young people aren't making it through the ed system. We have a 30% dropout rate in the United States alone. My goodness, we can do way better than that. So we have to be looking at what are we doing to stop that from happening? How do we keep people from falling through the gaps? We also need to be focusing on issues like number five, gender equality. We have to be looking at these issues. We have to understand how are we making room for those who need to be at the table? How are we giving voice to the voiceless? And how are we allowing communities to stand up for themselves? We need to be talking about these issues of gender. We need to be talking about these issues of how men, women, and everybody in between, and however anybody identifies, is stepping up to be themselves, and that we're creating an equal and balanced playing field so that we all can move forward together. Number six, we have to be looking at the issues of clean water and sanitation. We may think that just because we live in the US, we don't have to deal with these issues. But if we look hard, we can find communities that are suffering from these issues of lack of clean water. We have to just look up north, Flint, Michigan, for example. These communities are in a dire need, and our young people need to know what's going on. Number seven, we need to be looking at this issue of climate, because young people are going to be inheriting this planet. And so they need to be hearing about what's happening with our environment. We have to be giving back. We have to be connecting with all of these ecosystems and understanding how our role plays in everything that happens in our world. And yes, we should be looking at Mars and we should be looking at the moon, but we should be looking at our precious Earth first and foremost. Number 8, we should be looking at economic growth. We should be understanding that there are disparities and that we should be doing everything possible to close those gaps. We should find out what the issues are, and we should be taking the necessary steps to close those gaps so that young people and families and generations of the future have opportunity. Number 9, we need to be looking at innovation in industry and in infrastructure. We know that in our country and around the world, everything was built by previous generations needs to be, well, plain and simple, rebuilt. We have so much that is outdated and so much that our young people and the communities in general can give back to help fix those things that were built once upon a time. We need to upgrade these things. We need to upgrade our thinking, and we need to put innovation at the forefront of that. Number 10, we need to reduce inequalities. We know that there's inequality across the board on a variety of different issues, and we need to get to the root of those issues. Why is there this inequality? Who's benefiting from this inequality? And what can we do about it? Because young people are going to be inheriting this, and we want them to inherit a world that's better than the one that we see today. Number 11, we need to be looking at sustainable cities. More and more people are moving into cities. We need to understand, what does the city have to look like for the future? Not just for today. We're going to be dealing with very unique situations. We're going to be having to deal with more and more crowded spaces. How do people live together? How do we create cities that are actually prosperous and healthy for each and every one of us? Number 12, we need to be responsible consumers. We can't just blindly accept that we consume and consume and consume without end. We have to know that there's limits to that consumption and that we should be working within those means. It's not just reduce, reuse, recycle. It's about really understanding, do we really need to consume to begin with? And how do we reduce that footprint? Number 13, we have to take, again, this action when it comes to investing in technologies for the future and looking at clean technologies and this idea of having to power ourselves with things like the sun, with wind power. We have to understand that innovation can live in these tech spaces, and we have to connect back to providing jobs to young people, to helping the planet, and again, producing profit. This is all the triple bottom line that young people can be after. Number 14, we have to protect life below our waters. We have to make sure that our oceans, our rivers, and our lakes are clean and that there's life underneath. We have to protect the coral reefs. We have to do all of this because if young people are going to inherit this planet, they need to know what's going on and how we can bring some of those ecosystems back. We also have to, number 15, protect life above land. And that means planting trees. That means everything that crawls, everything that flies, and everything that walks on this earth needs to be protected. We need to be at the forefront of making sure that species and habitats are regenerated, that we're not just depleting the environment to no end. Number 16, we have to look at peace, justice, and strong institutions. We can't just wait and hope that things are going to get better. We actually have to be taking steps towards creating that world which we wish to see. As Mahatma Gandhi said, we need to be the change that we wish to see in the world. And last but not least, the 17th goal for sustainable development is to create partnerships around these goals. Again, connecting with anybody and everybody who's willing to move forward on these 17 areas. And we're lucky that these 17 areas are here for us because schools are at the forefront of educating young people on each of these different segments and finding out what our young people want to do about it. Rather than telling them what to do, we should be opening up schools so that they can figure out what they want to do. And it's going to take all of us focusing in on our next generation and our current generation so that things can change for the better. We see a lot of bright spots, and we want to make sure that, again, schools are not just focusing in on being the best in the world, but being the best for the world, because we only have one world. All right, folks, if this type of education is what somebody you love and you know would be interested in, please guide them to our website, www.changemakerhighschool.org/intent-to-enroll, and we want to schedule a tour with them today.